Okay, so hello and welcome to the third class on this course on EU constitutional law. And today we're going to be looking at the principle of direct effect, which is one of the key doctrinal foundations of the EU. You'll already have come across it before in your undergraduate course, but today we're really going to interrogate the origins and the rationale behind direct effect, and also how direct effect has contributed to the development of EU law. And direct effect is really one of those principles which is often thought of as being kind of one of the key reasons why EU law is developed differently to other international legal orders, and it's also one of the reasons why the EU is often compared to being more like a national legal order. Okay, and so what we're going to do is we're going to start by looking at one of the key foundational cases in EU law, which is Van Hendel-Noes, and we're going to look at the court's reasoning in Van Hendel-Noes. For those of you who are Dutch, like my common Irish pronunciation, but for the time being it's not important. EU lawyers are always at risk of mispronouncing things. Okay, so Van Hendel-Noes came about because there was a German company who was importing goods into the Netherlands, and the charges on those imports had gone up, and the Dutch company Van Hendel-Noes argued that the Netherlands was in breach of the standstill clause, which was then Article 12 of the EEC and is now Article 30, roughly, of the TFEU. And under that clause, member states weren't able to increase tariffs or customs on goods imported from other member states or introduce equivalent effects. Now then, what happened is that the Dutch court referred a question which asked not only whether the Netherlands was in fact in breach of the standstill clause, but it also asked what at the time was quite a controversial question, and which in many ways remains a controversial question, which was whether or not Article 12 of the EEC Treaty in fact had direct application within the laws of the member states, and whether it could be relied upon directly by individuals. And in answering that question, the court gave an opinion which was quite controversial. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you all, sorry, I got this wrong, how many people will be here, an extract from Van Hendel-Noes. And what I want you to do is I want each of you to read the first, I'm sorry, I only have 6. No, I'm going to share. Or unless you can share.
Oh, we can share.
Yeah?
Yeah. You want one? And then we'll share.
No, I don't even know what print home.
Oh, that's fine.
Okay, so what I want you all to do is I want you to read the first 2 paragraphs of this extract just in 2 minutes. Just read very quickly and look at the reasons that the court gave as to why EU law should be distinguished from other international legal orders, and then I'll take your answers. So just 2 minutes, read over it quickly. Has everybody had the time they need to read over? Now then, in your reading of this, these two short paragraphs, what are the explanations that the court gives for why we should understand the EEC, as it then was, now the EU legal order, as different from other international legal orders? Do any of you, yeah, Lynn?
Well, it seemed to me there were three ideas.
Mm-hmm.
One was that it was more than an obligation.
Okay.
So it assumed, so by more than it meant cooperation. It assumed added cooperation. And also acknowledged community law. So it built an argument beyond the more than obligation. Am I being clear? What?
No, I think you are, but so what do you mean by acknowledge community law?
Well, in the part here, confirms that the states have acknowledged that community law has an authority that can be invoked.
Okay, yeah, Wesley?
I thought that the first point was, so of course there's no comparison in here, but I suppose that the differences between this legal order and common international law is that these 3 points are that there's a direct connection between the people and the institutions, which is not the case, for example, with the United Nations, because it's only the states.
Yeah.
The other one is that the institutions have a level of sovereignty within their competencies, which is also not the case in other international institutions. And the third one is that the court has authority not only to mediate, but also to uniformly interpret, which is also something that is new, so to say.
Yeah. Does anyone else have any thoughts?
I have a question.
Yes.
Because I got these ideas, but I'm not sure why this is different to other kind of international.
Yeah, no, so this is great. Okay, so in those two paragraphs, which are probably some of the most widely read paragraphs by any EU law students, we see how the court is trying to construct out of EU law something which is very different and which supposedly is acknowledged by the member states to be very different than existing international legal orders. And as you've gone through, the reasons that the court gives are that it's more than just obligations, so it's in fact rights conferring directly onto individuals, and this contrasts precisely with existing international legal orders, which are seen very much as being contracts between states, so that it's the states who are acting and not individuals. So sovereignty, indeed, yeah, so some of the institutions of the EU had in fact lawmaking powers. And then also the preliminary reference system, which is this role of the court in interpreting EU law. So the fact that individuals were able to the fact that national courts were able to in fact bring cases and refer questions to the Court of Justice seems to imply that there is this role for individuals who are bringing cases to in fact refer to EU law. And it's these reasons, and also perhaps we might add in the existence of the European Parliament, we can tie that to peoples, that leads the court to conclude that the EU constitutes, as it says in the third paragraph that you've got there, a new legal order of international law, for the benefit of which states have limited their sovereign rights, albeit within limited fields, and the subjects of which comprise not only the member states, but also their nationals. And then the court goes on to say that independently of the legislation of member states, community law therefore not only imposes obligations on individuals, but is also intended to confer upon them rights which become part of their legal heritage. And this is really in this paragraph, the court does the jump from this aspect here of what's different about the EU compared to other international legal orders, to declaring the EU as being this new legal order. And does anyone know why it's so important, or why it's so why the court stresses that the EU is a new that the EU or the EEC law confers rights upon individuals independently of the legislation of member states? Do any of you know why? Do any of you know how international law usually takes effect within national legal orders?
Parliament has to ratify the treaties or agreements that have been done.
Yeah, so that's certainly one way. So that's what's referred to as dualism.
And there'd also be cases where the national overrides. I'm assuming that would be another possibility, that an international law might be modified or overridden by national laws.
That could be the case. That goes more to, that doesn't necessarily go to how international law takes effect within national law. It goes to more the status of international law once it's a part of the domestic legal order. But certainly, I think that if we just consider this aspect about dualism, and so what Sylvia says is that, and are you speaking about the Italian context here?
Not only.
Okay, yeah. That when sometimes in some member states, in some states in general, when governments will ratify international treaties, so the United Kingdom is one other such state, for that international treaty to take any effect within the domestic legal order, the states will normally need to pass a law which gives effect to that treaty. In other states, which operate under what's known as modalism, the Netherlands is one such country. International agreements and treaties which have been signed by governments will take effect automatically within the domestic legal order. But the important point is that it's national constitutional law which decides this point. Whereas in Van Hendelloos, does the court say that it's left to national constitutional law to decide this point? No. As you're shaking your heads, no, precisely, it doesn't. And this is what's really the main doctrinal move that the court makes in Van Hendelloos, is it draws from these reasons, which it finds support for in the original Treaty of Rome, and it makes this jump, and it says, no, this is not like any other international legal order, and instead the court gives itself the power to decide centrally on the effects of EU law within the domestic legal order. And this is really the core of direct effect as a principle, that it's for the Court of Justice to decide who or which provisions of EU law will apply directly within the national legal orders. And in fact, that EU law does apply directly in national legal orders, regardless of what national constitutional law says. And I think, oh, did you have a question? Sorry.
No, I was just thinking, because sometimes there's this threat of tension, you know? For example, with the German Constitutional Court, where there's sometimes the case that at least the idea is contested, that there are EU laws made that actually conflict with the German constitution, and therefore might be in conflict with it, no?
Yeah. So this goes much more to the idea of the primacy of EU law, and whether, which is, does anyone know what the primacy of EU law is?
Like, the EU law is always, if there is a contrast, is the EU law that weighs over the national regulations?
Yeah. So primacy of EU law means that whenever there is a conflict between national law and EU law, it should be the EU legal rule which prevails. And this is closely linked to direct effect. There are two schools of thought essentially on how the two link, but essentially where a provision of EU law is directly effective and so can be invoked or relied upon by individuals before that national court, then it also implies that EU law will take effect over any inconsistent national law. The problem is, and we saw this as well when we looked at primacy, is that this is what comes from the European Court of Justice, and it's not necessarily the same line, or the same explanation which is given by national courts. And so there is this tension between how the European Court of Justice understands direct effect and primacy, and how and the acceptance of this doctrine by constitutional courts. Do any of you know, has there ever actually been an instance in which a national constitutional court or a national court in general has refused to give effect to EU law?
I'm sure.
As in fact, as far as I'm aware, going blank, only one case, which was a Czech case about pensions. And so it's only, in fact, despite the constant threats of the German Constitutional Court, certain threats of the UK Supreme Court, there's actually, in fact, only been one case in which the primacy of the EU law.
Don't the threats... Oh, no, that's not. Last question. Don't the threats influence policy making? So that policy making, that the European Commission refrains from making certain laws or modifies them according to those threats?
Yes and no. In terms of the Court of Justice and the development of EU law, it's actually really inconsistent. Yeah, I'll stop. So it's really varied actually how the court responds to these threats.
Okay.
So, what would you like specific feedback?
Yeah, I don't know if this case exercise worked. I felt like it probably didn't. What did everyone think?
I thought it did. I mean, I think the part of the class that was the most clear for me was precisely when you were structuring the answers and this like board. What would have helped me is to have a more like, but maybe it's for more advanced students than me. So to have a bit of an introduction of how like normal, like usual, the international systems work, so we are able to compare basically. Because when you ask what is new about this, I really didn't know what it's not new, like how other systems work.
Yeah, I think it also worked really well. I mean, I actually had Paquette Loos in my undergraduate and it was terrible, but this was great. So, if only you would have been my teacher. But no, I think also, I also agree with it. I think a bit more contextualization of the concepts would be helpful. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just a couple of minutes probably before the exercise, but I think I also liked it.
Okay.
I really like it, but I'm not sure maybe it's that I can understand, but did we talk about direct effects at all?
Yeah, we did, but I think I could have made it clearer.
Or what is an direct effect?
Do you want to know? Direct effect is just the ability of an individual to rely directly on EU law before national courts. So, like, you can go directly and argue that your rights in EU law have been infringed, even if there's not a national law, which actually gives effect to this. I did actually intend to explain that first, and then I blanked that part out and went straight into the exercise.
I found it helped me. I think there were a couple of things that were helpful for me because I'm not a lawyer, is to be reminded how part of lawyerly thinking is parsing text, is making sense of text and interpreting text. And I still don't know why you didn't have us read the third paragraph, because the third paragraph kind of provided the answer as part of the answer, but you said only read the first two paragraphs. So I was still kind of, okay, when are we going to come back to the third paragraph? But then you kind of drew on it later on. So that was where I was a little bit...
Okay, I also just thought that maybe it was all, I wasn't sure how long it was going to take people to read, so I was nervous if I said read all three. And then the last paragraph I think is a bit dense, so I thought it was better to...
Okay, but you were drawing on it partway near the end.
Yeah.
I think we didn't need to read it that fast. I mean, for your like real lecture, you said like just read very fast, but it's short, so we could read a bit more.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, it didn't feel long for me at least.
That's okay then. I was worried that like I would give it out and everyone would be like, I've got no clue. So that's quite good to know actually.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.